Howdy! Welcome to the Culture Cave. Welcome back, I should say, to the Culture Cave, because I know you've been watching those last two Back to the Future episodes and you're salivating in the mouth. Anthony, where do you rank this one?
Okay, tier list. Let's do a tier list of the Back to the Future films, right?
Yeah,
sure.
So,
in the S tier, we got Back to the Future Part 1.
Sure, okay, I'll agree with that.
I would also put this one in the S tier too. Back to the Future Part 3, S tier.
S tier? Oh, wow, okay, alright.
It's not going to be a surprise to anyone, but see Back to the Future Part 2?
F tier.
Not as good as the other two, but it's going in the S tier.
Oh, that's ridiculous.
Come on, they're all S tier.
Anthony's made a mockery of the tier system, the sacred YouTube tier system. I would say this is better than the second one, not as good as the first one. It's still a good movie, though. It is still a good movie. I like how focused this one is.
I mean, the first one, there's a reason why that's the one where the musical was made of. You know what I mean? They made a musical of the first one. It's clearly the best. This one here is the second best, I would agree, but it is very good. The Old West, they nail it.
Oh, they do.
They nail it. They've even got those three little weird voice men from all the westerns.
Oh, we'll get to him. I like, as soon as I heard that voice, I was like, oh my god, I can't believe it. That's the guy from Robin Hood.
Yeah.
But yeah, talking about the music, obviously, like Alan Silvestri, he is back, but his score for this is probably, I'm going to say, the best of all three movies, because he has the theme. The theme is legendary. We all know the Back to the Future theme, but the motifs, Anthony, the Western motifs that he works into this, the styles or the stylization of that theme is really something impressive. I was really into it in this movie, I have to say.
Really brought the genre in. Like that's the thing is, it's so crazy that in this like sort of sci-fi time travel series, they were like, let's just make the last one a full-blown Western. And you know what? It really works.
I love it. Yeah, it's great. The rest of the gang's back. Spielberg gets a producer credit for the first time, although he's kind of been chipping in ideas for the whole thing. Huey Lewis and the News are out. We're bored of them. ZZ Top are in because apparently they are more of a Western band than Huey Lewis.
They got the beards for it. They got the beards for it.
They do have the beards for it. They appear in the movie. We'll get to that a bit later. But you're absolutely right. This is another period movie. And I said in the last episode, I think the problem I have with 2 is it's not very focused. It kind of jumps around a lot by design, but I don't think that works very well. Whereas the first one, it's all in the 50s, and this one, it's all in the Old West. It's all in 1885. Yep. And I think it benefits from that because you get to see much more of a consistent cast of characters. And in this one, stop me if you think I'm wrong, but I'm going to say this is Doc Brown's movie.
Interesting, actually. Yes, you're probably right with that.
Like, he's the heart. Well, him and Mary Steenburgen's character, whose name Clara.
Clara Clayton.
Yeah. That's the heart of this movie. I think that like Marty's there, he's doing stuff, but very much like George McFly and Lorraine's romance is kind of, to a lesser extent than this, but kind of the heart of Back to the Future 1. Doc Brown and Clara's relationship is the heart of this one, I think.
Yeah, and maybe that's actually one of the reasons why this film is second in sort of quality in the trilogy, because the second one didn't really have that. Didn't really have that sort of romance at the core of it. Whereas this one does, and the first one did. You're right. The reason why Marty McFly is going back in time is to try and save Doc Brown's life, because he finds out that he died in a gun battle
over a matter of $82. I believe is what it was over.
I think it was $80, but you know we're not bicker. We're not bicker. Although the introduction of Doc Brown is pretty cool when he saves Marty from being hanged.
Oh, with his fucking sniper rifle. Okay, right. You've mentioned it, so let's just talk about that for a second. At some point in every movie series, but particularly ones that are constrained by the technology of the periods that they operate in, the creators of the movie series just say, fuck it, and just like start throwing in whatever they want. And Doc Brown, the things that he's able to build in 1885 in this movie are a little far-fetched, I'm going to say.
What, a refrigerator? Like a freezer?
Yeah, the ice-making machine and the sniper rifle are... I mean, I know they had long-range rifles in 1885, but, like, optics simply weren't there for that kind of scope in 1885.
The funny thing is that's I completely passed me by that wouldn't have existed, because during that scene I was paying closer attention to Marty because I knew the piece of trivia. Now, sort of jumping the gun on our trivia here, but
Oh shit, I'm gonna have to scribble this out. Yeah, go on, say it now.
so Marty actually, like Michael J. Fox, I suppose, actually got hanged here for a brief moment, and he and he actually like was unconscious or something, was he?
Yeah, he passed out. Yeah, it was. He wrote about it in his autobiography that he just was hanged and passed out for like several minutes until he was resuscitated, which is, you wouldn't get away with that on a Bond. Imagine like fucking Chris Evans on the set of Captain America, just like, I was actually shot in the chest.
Crazy. Like, they literally hung their main actor.
Yeah.
Why was there not 100 contingencies in place? Like,
yeah, for a start, like, don't make it an actual noose.
also he's like it's like choking on it, and they're like, he is a brilliant actor.
Maybe Robert Zemeckis was looking at him. He's like, has he been talking to Eric Stoltz? Because he's being very method about this. That's a little callback for people who watched the first episode.
Oh, they all did. God, don't worry, they all did.
Okay, so first things first then. We've jumped around a bit there, but I have to get one thing straight. This movie manages to be racist to both Native Americans and the Irish. And I think that's impressive. Like, right off the bat, as soon as we get to the Old West, give it 10 minutes, it's like, okay, we've got stereotypical Native Americans, and then Michael J. Fox doing, I'm not going to say it's the worst Irish accent I've ever heard, but it's not high on the lists. Or it is high on the list, I should say.
So, you know, I've been living in Ireland since I was 12, right? And my wife is Irish. We were watching this film, really thinking to ourselves, is that a poor Irish accent?
Oh, okay.
You know what? I actually don't think he does too bad of a job. I honestly don't. And I think,
You've heard it here first.
unfortunately, viewing that as a terrible Irish accent, in my mind, that's the true bigotry all along. Because unfortunately, there are people in Ireland who sound like that. So saying that it's too over the top perhaps is just insulting the accent in general.
Oh, maybe I've been hoisted by my own petard here. I've had the mirror held up against my face. And I don't like what I see.
I've heard some real, like, people from Dublin, and like it's a very thick, harsh accent. In amongst the Old West voices, it does sound really out of place, and that helps you think it's really weird as well. I will say though, it will never be a bad accent to me, and that's purely because Marty McFly Michael J. Fox seems to have done a fair bit of research, because he actually calls the baby Barbie, and that is really Irish.
Yeah.
The wee Barbie.
That is true. He needed to talk about how he was going to take Biff or take Mad Dog outside and give him a betting or something like that.
A betting?
Yeah.
That would be Northern Irish, a betting.
Yeah. Okay, so we're in the McFly household. I've got a question for you. You're the time travel man. You're the plot hole man. We've talked about this already. I've come in.
Guilty.
Why the fuck does Marty's great-great-grandmother look like his mum? Like, it doesn't make any sense. Is the implication that Lorraine's great relative had already dipped into the McFly bloodline and then dipped back out again at some point?
It has to be. They've pulled the incestuous rug out from under our feet here. And unfortunately, this does heavily imply that Lorraine's granny is actually married to George's grandfather.
They really should have found that one in the family tree at some point, but like, maybe we shouldn't have children. This could get messy.
It is messy. I don't really understand that. Apparently the role of Seamus McFly was written for Crispin Glover, which makes it even weirder, because that means they're going to have the exact same romance just 2 generations before.
They might as well have just recreated the whole thing and had her like fall in love with Marty and then be like, it's like kissing me brother, and then like, in that day and age though, it probably would have been fine. They'd have been like, whatever.
Well, of course. Well, apparently it is, yeah.
So that's messed up. I mean, I think the real answer is they just wanted Leia Thompson back in this movie, and that was the way to do it. And to hell with the consequences.
They should have had her be Clara.
That'd make Doc Brown like Marty's like great grandfather.
That would make sense why he's hanging around with him.
We've cracked it. We've cracked the code. That's Robert Zemeckis. You've done it again. Yeah, okay, fine. We've cracked it. Let's just assume that Mary Steenburgen isn't in this movie for the rest of it, for the purposes of that. Talking about accents, very quickly, you've mentioned it already, but we got a bonus Pat Buttram of Disney, who was in Robin Hood and the Aristocrats. Actually, all of those old drunk dudes in the saloon are like staple character actors from Westerns.
Yeah, their voices can be heard throughout John Wayne movies and stuff.
Yeah, exactly. And Pat Buttram is the one that everyone will know. I'm going to try and do it. hold on, I'm going to take a run up to it and we're going to see how my Pat Buttram goes. He's got the voice that sounds like this. That's my Pat Buttram.
Right, let me give it a go. Okay, number two to the plate, Anthony.
Stepping up.
He just likes to hold it.
That was good. You got the kind of whistle at the end.
He just likes to hold it.
Yeah, that's good. Marty's back in 1885. Because of they find a DeLorean. It's a whole thing. They blow up some stuff to get to it. Now, the plans to get Marty back to his correct time have always been fairly dangerous. In the first movie, it's like, you've got to hit this wire at exactly this time and exactly this speed when the lightning strikes, or else you're in trouble. There was still road for him to drive down, so he wasn't just killed. In this one, he's got to get a train to push him at the speed that he needs to go to, and he's going to appear on an existing railway that doesn't exist in 1885.
But the Earth moves.
The Earth does move as well, so that doesn't make any sense. But let's just assume that this works in terms of physics. If he misses it, he's just going to fly off this bridge to his death. That's the plan, essentially.
That's the plan, Stan.
I don't think that's a solid plan.
I can assume that they chose this track because it is flat and level. Why didn't they stay on the main track? We'll just assume it is flat and level and maybe the other track doesn't exist anymore. Doc knows his ways. Why on earth they didn't go and just get the gas from Doc's DeLorean that he took back? I don't know.
They should have done that. He'd put the DeLorean in a fucking cave. Yeah, oh, that's ridiculous. that thing's full of gas.
Yeah, it's full of gas. It's full of Japanese parts that are very well made. It could have got him straight back. I don't know why they weren't doing that.
That's quite a big plot hole, to be honest. To be like, cause, I mean, the only argument against that would be, I've already blown up the tunnel and whatever and sealed it in. And it's like, well, just unblow it up with more dynamite. It's far easier, this entire train plan that you've come up with.
Yeah, so there is a little bit of leeway there for Doc, saying maybe in his attempts to get it working, he wasted all of the fuel, all right? And they just ignored it because it was wasted. Let's give him that. This next plot hole, Conrad, in Anthony's part 3 of the plot hole extravaganza, is going to blow your mind, because this is the one that there's no excuses for, no matter what. Okay. Clayton Ravine. It was called Shonash Ravine, which is an old Indian name, and then it got changed to Clayton Ravine because a young school teacher fell into the ravine, one Clara Clayton. So in the 55 that Marty is living in, we know 2 facts. It's called Clayton Ravine, and Doc had a lover called Clara Clayton. But how are those 2 facts correct at the same time? Because if she had fell in the ravine, then he never would have saved her and met her to fall in love with her.
Yeah, so I suppose Doc Brown could have been out independent of his activities with Marty, and he could have saved her in that initial one. No, hold on. He could have saved her that time, but then years later...
But then it wouldn't have been called Clayton Ravine.
Well, no, he would have saved her from that one, and then years later, in a totally unrelated or a totally separate instant, she would have fallen in anyway. That's the only thing I can think of, is that...
Well, we know that's not true, because he got shot 2 days later or something.
Well, okay, so maybe he saved her from that one, and then he's shot, and then in her grief, she threw herself into the ravine. Maybe that's what happened.
But I also, he wrote the letter. He mentioned Clara in the letter, didn't he? My beloved. Yeah. Oh no, it says that on the stone.
Oh, it's on the gravestone. Yeah, it says that.
Okay, so it only says that on the stone because she paid for it. All right, okay. So that's what happened then. He did meet her. He was out there doing something. Maybe look at the stars. Who knows? He met her. And then he died in the over $80.
Mad Dog Tannen killed him, yeah.
And then she threw herself into the ravine. I think that stacks up.
There's some poetry to that. I think I trust Robert Zemeckis to land that plane. Okay, so Biff. Then we've mentioned him briefly there, or. Is he called Biff in this? I didn't actually ever catch his first name.
Buford.
Oh, Buford. That's it. Buford Mad Dog Tannen. Real nature over nurture themes. In this, regarding the Tannens, a couple of questions I have in this one. Biff as a character, or the Tannen, the resident Tannen antagonist in this series, has gone from an awful bully who is a potential sexual abuser to a murderous magnate to the literal worst cowboy that has ever lived. Like, Mad Dog Tannen is a nightmare person.
Yeah,
I mean, essentially what they're saying is that no matter what a Tannen does in their life, they will always become a complete scumbag, no matter who raises them, what environment, which I think is an interesting comment that Robert Zemeckis and Bob Gale are making on human nature there.
This family line is putrid to the core.
Yeah, there's no saving him.
Although, having said that, though, Mad Dog is one of my favorite iterations of this character. I think that Tom Wilson is his name. He did a fantastic job making himself into a different thing for me. I think to the point where when I was a child, I actually think the first time I watched it, I didn't realize it was the same actor.
I mean, I think to a certain extent in all three movies, he more than anyone else has to reinvent himself. Because, you know, the sort of magnate Donald Trump Biff in Back to the Future 2 isn't really that similar to high school bully Biff in Back to the Future 1, and likewise Buford is a complete, I mean, they're all evil, but they're completely different characters, have completely different mannerisms for the most part, completely different ways of talking. So yeah, a great performance from him.
Also, he also has that version of himself who's like Worm Tongue to George McFly.
Worm Tongue. Great. I told you to take away his staff. That's what we need. Is a version of Lord of the Rings with Tom Wilson.
That's what he's like, though, isn't he?
He is a little bit. He's a sycophant. Yeah, he just sucks up to Marty, to George rather. Okay, so we get the town festival.
Lovely music.
Yeah, ZZ Top playing a country version of Double Back. Why doesn't Strickland, when Buford and his gang reveal that they haven't actually turned in all their guns to enter the festival, and they draw a gun, threaten a man, and then threaten his partner, why doesn't he just kill him? Why doesn't he just shoot him with his shotgun?
Because this is the biggest twist of all. Strickland is a slacker.
Oh no.
I think he is a slacker because Buford Mad Dog Tannen should have been put into jail here. Maybe even hung. Or even killed then and there because he was literally shooting party members. Yeah, no, I think you got a point there, Conrad. What I will say to you is they try to slip in a little joke that Marty invented Frisbee. So not only skateboards, he's also invented the Frisbee.
And he also, you know, we haven't actually said this yet, but in a departure from the second movie, he takes a pseudonym of Clint Eastwood in this. So he's also making the name Clint Eastwood famous in this. And he also, which I really liked as a callback to Back to the Future Part 2, in 2 we see 85 Biff watching The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly.
Yeah.
Specifically the bit where Angel Eyes is shot in the chest and seemingly killed, and then he reveals he's wearing like a metal plate on his chest as like a sort of rudimentary bulletproof vest. And he does it in this movie. And I respect a callback to Back to the Future 2.
Yeah, no, I really thought that was cool. But I will say, Marty has balls of steel because the coverage of that metal plate wasn't huge.
Not a lot, no. Like you could still get shot quite easily in the stomach, and that'll kill you.
Yeah, like it wasn't very big. So yeah, props to Marty for that. I like the idea in this one is that maybe the first time we've seen like the photograph change from Doc to Clint Eastwood. So like we've had it change before, but it usually changes to like a good outcome. This one changed from one bad outcome to another bad outcome, which I thought was pretty interesting. Yeah,
that definitely is interesting. And I love that whole like showdown at the end. It's really, but this movie essentially has like two endings. It has like the kind of shootout ending. It's not really a proper shootout, but it's very tense. Buford is very menacing, and that's like that comes to its conclusion, and then we have the wild train sequence at the end as well, where it's not a Deus Ex Machina, but Doc has invented like super hot burning fuel that he just chucks into a steam engine and makes it explode at a certain time, which is kind of dumb, but it really works quite well as an exciting conclusion to the story, I think.
Yeah, and we get the nice little ending to the Doc and Clara, relationship where she comes back because he tells her that he's a time traveler, and then she comes back, and then he eventually doesn't go back to the future because he like gets on the hoverboard and saves her instead, which I thought was lovely. But in that romance, in that courtship of them, there is a moment where they're talking about Jules Verne, 10,000 Leagues Under the Sea, and Doc accidentally lets slip that he read it when he was a little boy. Okay. Yeah. And Clara laughs and says, "You couldn't have read it when you were a little boy. It was only published 10 years ago." Now, here's a question for you, Conrad. How old would Doc be when he's a little boy? You think like 8 years old?
Sure. Yeah, something like that.
Yeah. So we know from the continuity of this film that adult Doc looks the same no matter what. So actually... Yeah. This Doc she's talking to could be a 19-year-old young man.
Yeah, I mean, it's impossible to tell.
It's impossible to tell. Like, so actually, I think that's a bit of a mistake from the writers there, because this could be an 18-year-old Christopher Lloyd here.
Yeah, I'm buying that. Here's something I'm not buying as we get into the end of this. I understand why they do it. I understand why they have the denouement. You get some Elizabeth Shue, you get some Marty. He turns down the race with Flea, so Flea gets a paycheck in this, or what's his name? Needles in this.
Needles. Also, Jennifer gets her... her little "you're fired" paper to disappear, so she gets her own one of those.
Absolutely. And then we get the big reveal. I understand why they did it, and I understand it's a feel-good moment, but that train just shouldn't work in any way. I'm not much of a physicist. I'm certainly not an engineer of aerodynamics, but that thing shouldn't fly.
That's not the biggest problem here, Conrad. The biggest problem is, why the hell do the crossing lights go off before he's even come into the time?
That is wild. That implies that they operate on some kind of like metaphysical level where it's like, I can feel something coming.
Yeah. Like, what's going on there? I got 2 points. 2 points on this final scene.
Go on.
My first point is that, geez, that little Vern is an evil bastard, isn't he? There's a moment where he says, "My jewels," and Vern, and when you show Vern, he looks so evil, that kid.
Is Vern the youngest one?
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's I was going to do this in trivia, but I'll do it now. There's a classic moment when child actors need to like go to the toilet or something on set, they'll have like a handler, like it's often like one of their parents, but it's not always. Yeah. And because they don't want to say something during takes, they'll have like little hand gestures they do, and there's a close up of Doc Brown's face, and his head is at like kind of crotch level with his two sons.
Yeah.
And you can see Vern doing this desperate like beckoning motion with one of his hands and then pointing at where his penis is. So that actor clearly was like needed the toilet during that scene and is desperately motioning for someone to come and take him away, which is maybe why he looks like such an evil little monster, because it was like he was bursting for the toilet. I can't believe they left it in.
He's been holding it for 100 years. Like,
oh yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Also, the second point is on the frame. I never actually read what it said on the frame before, but I thought it was pretty cool. It said, because he gave him the frame of them in front of the clock back in 1885, and it says, "To my partner in time."
Oh, nice. Very good. I will say that photograph was not taken in 1885. Like, that is the highest resolution photograph I have ever seen from 18. Like, have you seen photos of that time period? It's just like a splodge of white with eyes in the middle of like darkness. Most of those photos, like, you can't even make out it's a person.
For how quick the flash was, yeah. I think the higher quality photos from back then, aren't they like longer? They take longer to.
Yeah, like the exposure. I can't remember
exposure.
if it's exposure or not, but it's you had to sit still for like 5 minutes while you were exposed to the film. But I wasn't buying it. Okay, right. So that's all sorted. Oh, actually, no. I had one thing I wanted to say before we get into the trivia. How come Biff is still alive in 1985? Do you not think that Mad Dog Tannen was going to get taken off and hung or hanged?
He might have already had a child.
Yeah, I feel like he would have mentioned it. I guess maybe he could have had one and not known about it. He does seem like the kind of person who was going around doing all sorts of...
Yeah, but why would his son be called Tannen? If you know what I mean? Or his daughter or whatever.
I was expecting... I didn't remember this movie very well, and I was like, oh, okay, well, that's the end of the Tannen line then. So we've gone from, he's been covered in shit and humiliated, to we've ruined his life. Like, we've taken away all this wealth from him and ruined his life. And then finally, the natural end of that arc is he's just dead now. We've just killed all of his line. So I was surprised to see Biff show up at the end of this movie alive and well somehow. Maybe he had a kid while he was in prison. I don't know. Maybe he reformed.
But they kept the good version of him. You know, let's be honest. He kept the one that waxes Marty's new car twice.
But he shouts at Marty. You know, he's still got that edge to him. The first thing he does is call him butthead. So, you know, there's still... I don't understand why George still employs him, because he's not to be trusted. I wouldn't trust him.
Also, what about Lorraine? Like, truly, what is
exactly?
What is George doing? This man who tried to rape Lorraine when she was a teenager is now hanging around their house all the time, and George is okay with it because he's getting them to do stuff for him.
Do you think Lorraine brings it up and George is like, keep your friends close and your enemies closer, Lorraine? that was my Crispin Glover impersonation. Okay, right. Very quickly then, bit of trivia. You've done the main one that I had, so I just wanted to do one last bit. Tom Wilson, the actor who plays Buford Mad Dog Tannen in this, did all of his own horse stunts in this movie, including lassoing Marty.
A bit too well, that lasso, to be honest.
Well, yeah, absolutely. So not only was he, you know, putting on a great performance and really bringing the character to life, but he was doing all this physical stuff as well. Like, absolutely. I think, you know, this is Doc Brown's movie, but Tom Wilson's Mad Dog Tannen is a star of the show here as well, I think.
This is a man who he didn't deserve his career to like tank after this. I don't know if it tanked, but he definitely didn't become a household name, Tom Wilson. Like
No, and like this is still the role that everyone associates him with. I think,
of course.
I think it's fair to say he was very typecast, but you never know. I mean, he's probably what, like 60 now? Make Back to the Future 4. I can't believe that movie hasn't been made.
Robert Zemeckis and Bob Gale, they've said as long as they live, they're not going to let it be done because they own the rights.
Well, that's probably good. I mean, I prefer that, honestly, but it just seems like the appeal of remaking nostalgia properties is so big at the moment.
I'm so glad they're still holding out. I will say as well, though, that Christopher Lloyd apparently wanted a fourth one to be made, where him and Marty go back to ancient Rome.
Oh, amazing.
As funny as that and great as that would be, jeez, Christopher Lloyd, you went through 3 films and you still don't really understand what these films are about. Like, he's like, let's go to ancient Rome. It's like, It was never about where you're going.
Let's go to space in this one.
Like, what's the storyline? Who's Leah Thompson going to play in ancient Rome? Like,
oh, that'd be great. Imagine, she plays like Cleopatra or something, just to
he literally just wants Blackadder, is what he wants.
Yeah, basically. Yeah, he just wants to get dressed up in outfits, which I can empathise with.
Yeah.
But that's it. Back to the Future 3 done. Back to the Future as a series done. We did it. Thank you for watching along with us. Please give the show a like, subscribe, do all that good stuff. Get involved in the comments. Let us know ways in which you think that Mad Dog Tannen managed to survive his ordeal in prison and have children. Or maybe he's not actually even related. Maybe it's completely unrelated, and Biff Tannen is just a guy who looks similar to him.
In Hill Valley, every like bad bully guy looks like that. I don't know why. It's just how it goes.
Yeah, it's a very limited gene pool. So